All right. So, like I said, tonight we're going to go over some of the basics again, but more of we're trying to translate what we practiced with last class. That's going to keep messing me up. Turn that away. Um, what we practiced with the last class, learning about the basics of just how to work with sketches, translate those and use some of the basic sketch tools and translate that into an extrudable object. We're going to build off of that with the full project, which is you are creating your own like logo. Now, like I said, you can use your own. You can start from an image, or you can kind of combine them. If you start from an image or anything like that, you do not have to make it exactly like the example image. So if you're bringing in like like any kind of like sports logo or anything like sport team logo, anything like that, that's fine. You do not have to keep it exact. We're not worried about this is not plagiarism. You're making your own thing. Plus, it's for educational purposes. We will discuss that later on in the semester. But if you can call it educational purposes and you're not selling it, you're not plagiarizing, unless it's for a grade, and then whatever. Anyway, so let's go over some of these basics and kick over. So let me bring up Fusion. Wow, that is just frustrating. All right, so I brought up these examples last class. What we're essentially trying to create here is some sort of just a flat sketch-based image. Then using the extrude tool, take that up from a two-dimensional, yes, virtual object into a three-dimensional object. And again, a lot of this is going to be, yes, parametric modeling. As we kind of briefly talked about last class with what the concept of parametric modeling is you can go back in your history bar, make changes, and it will reconfigure as you go. But one of the difficult things is, at least in Fusion, there is no history capture. It does not capture like linear history in the sketch environment. So when we start, let's just start from a new object. And like I said, tonight, we're just going to ignore this right now. We're just going to stay with this new version, the part design, because we're just making the one thing. It doesn't mean that it's only make one body. We can make multiple bodies, but we're just sticking with the part design. Create new. That's fine. And remember, you can change that by under the project tree, part design, pops up a little conversion. There you go. When you start a sketch, one asks for what plane, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But from here, we're starting with just a series of lines, sketches, anything like that. But as we create more, blah, 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 doesn't matter. This does not get captured down here. So anything you do, if you want to step back in time on this, the only option you have is Control V, Control Z, Control Y, or if you're on Mac, Command Z, Command Y, the back and forths. Now you can always go back into a finished sketch. So, yep, I finished, I'm done. Crap, I changed my mind. I don't like that anymore. Okay, I don't have any other ones. Okay, we're suspending the one session you have going that is not going. All right, pardon me a moment. Let me pause this. No. Okay, well, we solved that problem. Yeah, like I said, you can only have one instance of Fusion of your own, or of you signed in, rather. You can only have one instance going that you are signed into. So minor details, these things happen. Okay, back over to Fusion. So what we're doing is basically working with these single sketches. You can only build from there. Like I said, also, you cannot capture history with these. But if you need to go back in and adjust your sketches, let me just go ahead, since I'm already still in this one, I'll just unhide my original sketches, hide the bodies and all that canvas stuffs. So you see I have multiple sketches going here, and I should have labeled these. But I'm building off of these, and you can always go back in. I am not currently in a sketch environment, but you can go back in, and you need to if you need to make adjustments. All you have to do is not on the label, but on the symbol itself, right click, and you can go to edit sketch, or you see how when you select a part or a part on your actual project, it will highlight down here what tool it is referring to. You can right click on that one also, which is again why it's very important. If you don't, I highly recommend getting a mouse. A cheap mouse will work just as well as a fancy one. But go back in, edit sketch. Now it brings me back into the sketch environment. As you're asking about the mirror symbol, I have so many of the constraint icons going from the mirror because I only made half of it, mirror the whole thing over. Unfortunately, Fusion is making a symbol for every single instance that of that line or whatever I used, and I don't know why there's just a whole line of the mirror symbol. Aside from it's probably the line itself is mirrored. Anyway, so like I said, one of the things you can do is let the program do the work. So if you need have a more complex thing that is going to be the exact same on either side, mirrored, do half of it, mirror it. If you need to go back in and add to that, you can using the Edit Sketch tool. Once you are finished, there's no linear history captured, so you can always go back and edit, but you cannot use the any form of parametric modeling with this. Once you are done, finish again, finish sketch, it will recalculate to what you've done. If you have made too many changes, or maybe you've made alterations to your project that have an effect on the actual bodies, you will get an error. So if I'd gone in and let's say, which one has my label? There we go. Which I should have written in here. Text. Always label your stuff. Edit sketch. So if I wanted to say, double click in here, yep, parametric text, great. It's going to come back in. And let's say I wanted to use a different font or something, or a different size, anything like that. Doesn't matter. Let's bump that down to like 8. I don't know. Of course, that's going to mess everything up. Whatever. Yeah, this is always the fun thing is when you are working with this, and we'll talk about this in a minute, you have to kind of carefully arrange everything. Does not automatically center on a point. Okay, so I made that slight alteration. That's all I did. Finish sketch. Oh, it actually worked perfectly fine. Cool. Sometimes what will happen, because that extrude happened based on that sketch, you might have a error. All you got to do is go back in and just update that sketch, or update that extrude. Anyway, let's start from scratch. So anybody that wants to, we're going to be doing a part design, or we're just create new as is, whatever. Some of you asked, hey, I'd like to work from a image. Great. First things first, though, because I want to make sure I'm building something within the space that I want, or within the requirements. So this one is going to be, remember, we are working about a max of about 100 millimeters square. That doesn't mean it has to be square, just that's the rough general size. So like I started with before, start a sketch on the XY plane, which we're going to explain in a moment. And I'm going to just start a center rectangle. 100, press tab, cycles over. Oops, 100.
What? Whoa, we're going too fast.
Okay, one moment. So I'm just started with a rectangle, and I just made a red rectangle starting smack in the middle. That's it. Using the rectangle tool or under your create.
My thing's not in metric. It's in imperial.
Okay, I'm just showing on this example here.
To metric. We can do that.
Okay, but let me finish this one part.
Okay.
Center. 1 second. Let me finish this, and I'll help you with that.
Yeah, no worries.
So I'm just starting that, so I have a reference point. So the question was, mine was set at, or yours, or the question was, it was set not in metric, and also where's that tool? So again, if you need to change units, I know it's right in front of me, on your project tree over here, under document settings, the first one is the units. When you mouse over that, this little sketchpad symbol pops up. It pops up a toolbox on the other side of the screen, but that's where you can change over. Once you start that, I'm going to label this one as that's just my reference. I got a band-aid in my finger so it keeps messing up my typing. I just wanted that size rectangle, or in this case square, as a reference. So I'm going to start my sketch, but I want to use a image to work from. So this is my general reference. It's 100 millimeters by 100 millimeters. What you want to do in order to insert a drawing of a picture, anything like that, into Fusion, we go over to Insert, or it's the top here. An image in Fusion is called a canvas. Whatever. They just felt like labeling it that way. Drop down, or it's this symbol here, canvas, and you have it on you have a picture saved in your computer. So you go from insert from computer. I have a picture saved, the downloads. Now it's going to ask you, where do you want to put it? Same idea. I would have put it same position that I just made that sketch, that reference sketch. That's all. Right there. Now it's going to ask me, how big do I want to make that, or position. Because I'm starting everything smack in the middle, it works the best if I put everything smack in the middle. Let's make it a little bender head. Now, you can resize this as you like, but I'm going to show you how to do it exactly in a moment. Yes.
So did we get the image on there?
I had it already saved on my computer because I found a picture online. You use the canvas symbol or under insert, canvas, and then find it on your computer. Yep. So you don't have to resize this right now, but I want to position it like smack in the middle. Cool. That'll work. Upper right hand.
Upper right hand. Help, extensions, job status, my name, your design.
Not all the way.
Okay. Insert. Gonna be mad.
There we go. Okay. So my little bender symbol, my little bender head is smack in the middle. Great. If I want to move it around, you could do that. Still go back in. Because you can see down here, now it's added a canvas symbol. However, I want to resize it, as in not just using the scale tool. You can shrink and grow, all that kind of thing. That's perfectly fine. And you can do that anytime, even if you change your mind. Hey, I want to re-edit that. Great. I can use the scale tools in here. I can type it in numerically. So remember, scale works as a multiple. So it's not 3.4 inches or 22 millimeters. It's times 1, times 2, times 1.5, anything like that. Just like half of something is 0.5. There you go. So if I want to make this, say, like twice as big, I would need to type in 2. Only that's not all locked. So I'd have to do that individually, which is just really frustrating. So what you can do is you can also use these arrows to move it around, but you see these little simple lines? These allow you to drag it to scale. So I can shrink and grow, left and right, or the little curved one. That is a uniform scale because it's in 2D. Or, since I don't want any of that, me personally, I want to make this a different size specifically. So what I can do is up on the upper left hand, now my project tree has started with something new. I now have a folder for canvases. Open that up and right click where it says your image. I cannot edit canvas, but calibrate. Edit allows you to move it around, resize it by scale. Calibrate allows you to size it specifically. So what I can do, let me zoom in. Let's just say from the top, you just pick a couple points. From the top and the bottom. It's telling me that image from top to bottom of not the actual image size, but the part that I picked. So you could have, say, an image that has like a much bigger size than the actual picture you want. So like the picture itself, the image size is yay big, and your little symbol is inside of that. You can pick those points on the symbol itself. So now I want that to be somewhere not quite 100 millimeters, but less. So let's say 85. It's inside my screen. Now that tip of the antenna to the bottom of the head is 85 millimeters tall. So you can use the scale tool to resize it manually, or you can use the calibrate tool to make it a specific size. Makes it a lot easier to work with this stuff. All right. Got my sides, all that mess. Let's actually draw on it. So this is where you'd start a new sketch, right smack on top of everything else you did. And this is where you just start drawing all that. So for here, again, let the program do the work. And also, if you have an image like this, try to break it down simply. Meaning, if I look at this, yeah, you could draw all this by hand. But ultimately, break it down as an image. How does that actually look? From like, not necessarily an art perspective, but it is. All right, that's a circle. Those are 2 triangles. The whole thing is a big dome. And that whole thing I could split that in half. Meaning, I could just draw half of this and then just let the computer do the other part. Then I could make the little eyeball part and a couple eyeballs there. That kind of thing. So that's what I mean by let the program do the work. So now we're in the sketch environment again. Have at you. I'm not going to go through all the steps here just because I don't want to waste time. This is obviously the part where we're going to pause, let y'all work. But different things like I can use like a center point circle. And on mine, it's already up here. But if you don't have that, under create, you can use any of the circles, but like a center point circle. Zoom so we're in and just make it about the right size. There we go. Stuff like that. Same thing, use like the line tool. Yeah, right about there to right about there. And obviously so on and so forth. So we're going to build that out as best we can. And like I was saying also, if I want to make this easily make it mirrored, you don't have to. But if you want to, if you plan to make this a thing that you can mirror side to side, let's just go ahead and draw a line from the top to the bottom. I'm trying to get it close. It's going to be a little wonky because I didn't quite make it right. If you get a little confused, meaning that, all right, I've got my picture, I've got this other reference box, all this stuff, there's too many lines going on. Remember, you could always hide them. So like if I need to see what I'm drawing a little more clearly, hide your canvas for a minute, hide the reference box for a minute, anything like that. So one of the things we talked about last class was constraints. This line is not straight up and down. Let's select that, use the horizontal vertical constraint, and it's going to snap it straight up and down. Now, is it smack in the middle on my line? No, but I can move things around a little bit. So we're going to keep working on this, and we're going to go and we're going to keep building it out. But a couple people asked me for a couple of specific things. So the mirror tool, we're going to get into that in a second, but one of the other ones would be how do you use like circles versus ellipses? Well, that's a simple difference on just what tool you're using. So for here, a circle would be any of these, or if I go to the circle tool on the drop down and create, you have a variety of different options for circles. I often like using center point circle when I'm just drawing because I can just move it from that center point wherever I want it to be. So let's just say right about there. But if I have difficulty, like I'm not really sure where the center of that is, that would be that would be where you use something like 2-point circle. So that means I can pick 2 points and it essentially becomes the diameter. So, and right about there and right about there. And I just move my second point around until it matches as best I can. That looks pretty good. But one of the other questions was, all right, you got that, but I want to make it an oval. That is a separate tool called the ellipse tool. If it's not already on your toolbar, you can add it, but down to create, and you just go to ellipse. If you need to add, you can alter what is available up here on your toolbar. As I mouse over this tool, the ellipse tool, an ellipses symbol shows up. That's those little 3 points next to the thingy. If you click on that, yeah, I didn't plan for the ellipse, whatever. If you left click on that, comes up, pin to toolbar, pin to shortcuts. So you can see it up on the top of my toolbar, pops up and down. When you do that, use that tool. Same deal though. Start from the center, you go upwards, and then you can go left and right, and that makes it shrink and grow. You can always go back and change those. See how you have these lines between? One of the other things we didn't quite get to yet is if there's no line there, how do I change those circles? Do I have to do it again? The other thing you have here is a dimension tool. This is the part where you can add in the numbers themselves, because you can still change this by grabbing points, but see how that's moving the whole thing all around? Instead, I want to bring up the dimension itself, the actual number. So select there, and I'm going to select that line because that's the one I'm going to want to adjust, the left and right. And I can just move this number wherever I want to. This is irrelevant. I can move it left and right of the whole thing, up and down, doesn't matter. But now I can put in an actual number. So Instead of 6.26, yada, 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 let's say I wanted it to be 5. But that changes it from the center. So it doesn't move it all the way around. It just changes the actual dimension of from what you put in. So you can move things around by hand, or you can actually change the dimensions. And if you do need to move the whole thing, use the move tool. It is a little frustrating because you can click and drag on things, but that doesn't always do exactly what you want. I'm somehow both shrinking and growing the thing and moving it left and right. A little frustrating. So if you need to move something specifically, there's the move tool, or as it says on there, you mouse over the hotkey on your keyboard, just press M, the letter M, and that brings up move and copy. Because now I can select what I want to move and how I want to move it. But that also allows me, you have arrows that move it in a single direction, up, down, left, right. The square in the middle is the pan tool. That means I can grab the whole thing and just move it wherever I want. The free transform was what it's called. I can move it all around my screen. I can also, oops, I didn't mean to have that go away. You also have this little arc tool that as I mouse over, the rest of the circle appears. That's how I can rotate things. Problem is, it's not letting me move. It's only selecting that center because I didn't actually click the whole ellipse that after I accidentally got out of it. Now, why the heck is it doing both growing and... All right, that is all kinds of funky.
I think it's because it has to be five
Yeah,
years at that axis you put.
yeah, and I didn't lock in the other one, so let me adjust that one. I don't know, sure, 14, fine. Now that should be locked in. Now let's try moving this freaking thing.
Well,
So this is what I mean by sometimes Fusion does some really weird things. I'm not certain ultimately what's happening here. Look at how it's actually moving. It's moving on an arc until it gets so far away. I'm not sure why the heck that's happening right now. That is super funky.
okay.
So let's try just rotate this thing. Why is it not letting me? That is really weird. So again, things happen. So one thing that I have found that if it starts doing like freaking out and doing some really weird things, one of the things I have found solutions with at the bottom of this toolbox, create copy. This is your copy paste. You can, yes, copy paste things, but you can also move them as a copy. So in this is kind of the whole idea there, so you don't have to copy paste then move. You're already in the move tool. Let's try creating a copy. Hit OK. I don't know if this is going to change it. Let's try the second one. Okay, this thing is now just making me look a fool. Anyway, I don't know why that's happening. One of those things I'm going to have to come back to. Anyway, hopefully you don't run into that, but there it was. How I was selecting more than one things, if you know you copy and pasted something directly on top of one another, same thing if you have like multiple lines on top of one another, if you press and hold, click and hold, this little toolbox pops up. Now you can select between the different ones. That's all. All right. So aside from chaotic move things, we're going to ultimately, with all of this, we're just going to work our way through. If you want to add text, you can add with the text thing or with the text tool. Now, what I want to do, because I'm just making this, all right, I'm going to have my little bender head, but I'm going to turn this thing into a whole like logo or a keychain in this case. So I'm going to finish the sketch and I'm going to add a third sketch because I want to make this a roundel. You do not have to make it round. You don't have to make it square. It could be an amorphous blob. It does not matter. You could even stay with just the logo. I just want to show you some additional things. So I want to start with an additional sketch because I like to keep things isolated. It helps me work the problem. And what I mean by that is I'm going to make this like a round logo. So I'm going to start again, right smack in the middle. I'm going to make my circle bigger. So that's essentially what my whole thing's going to look like. And now what I'm going to do is we talked about using the offset tool. This just makes it easy instead of like, all right, maybe I want to make several concentric circles. make a circle tool, make another circle tool. No, instead, I'm going to use one of the modifiers, the offset tool. That's all it is, because that's basing it off of a thing you already select, and I can shrink and grow it from there. So inside or outside, whatever. Let's say I want to make that 2 millimeters smaller. That's it. Now what I can do is, and I'm going to hide this logo and stuff like that just to kind of help me save some stuff here. I can add text either, yes, showing you different ones. Now I guess it brings up different text options. You can create text two different ways. Like a text box, like you normally would, click and drag, create a box. Like in a lot of other programs like Photoshop, anything like that. You can sample text, away you go. All right. Running into this again. So a word of warning. I'm going to write this up here. I don't know when this got added, but when you are trying to create text, it forces you to have single parentheses around. So if it starts it, you can see there is two little single parentheses, and you have to write inside of that. If you forget and delete the whole thing, just make sure you just re-add those back in. That's all you have to do. It's extremely frustrating. I don't know why that's there, but there it is. Once you have added your text, that's where you can play around with the different fonts. You can change it bold or italic. You can change the alignments down at the bottom, like center, right, all of that. You can change all that stuff. You can change the height as well, the actual font size. So 12, 15, whatever. There you go. But you can also create text on a path, meaning a line. A line is your path. So I'm just going to use a fit point spline just to show you the difference. I can create text before I selected that box. This time, select text on a path, and I can select that line. Now the problem is, you can see how that can get really, really distorted. But you can always change things around. Now, one thing, your alignments, it's going to align to an end, either end or to the center. Well, that's all well and good for a line. What if your line is a circle? That's where it gets a little awkward. It starts in the left quadrant. So if you're in a circle, it starts. I'm just going over text, and I'll repeat this stuff later. If you're starting in a circle, the start point is over here, and your text moves around going clockwise. So you can play around with alignment. So if it's a line left, starts there. If it's a line right, it ends there. If it's a line center, it's all on the right side. So in order to align like I did on, say, nope. Oh, sorry, the zoom stuff is right in my way. Like this one, I had to just kind of tab over. Oh, it got out of my tool there. So if I'm trying to get to that, if I'm trying to get this to align over, I have to just use inside of the quotes, the space bar. It's real dumb. This is definitely one of those things of really Fusion. You haven't figured this part out yet. Look, they made a team sharing program that you can't share between teams. There's issues. Anyway, so you do have to work within that, and that means that sometimes it's not going to be exact. You're just going to have to work with it. But you can play around with the text, all that kind of stuff. One word of warning, don't go with too ornate of texts. Things like ones that have like this, the Algerian here that has these little tiny cut-ins, those won't always translate to the printer because your printer head, the printing only works by only how small the print head is. You cannot print something that's smaller than the print head. So something like that, don't go with like the Algerian. Maybe change over to something like the, I don't know, rounded or what. Okay, something like that. No, don't use wingdings, things like that. That would no, that would be cool, and that would actually probably work.
Then what's his name tried that last semester?
Yeah, but that was because he was trying to wrap it around an object. That was what. Yeah, it wasn't that time. It wasn't the font. It wasn't. It wasn't. It wasn't. Like high elf, whatever. It was just because I was trying to wrap around a weird thing. But yeah, play around with the fonts, that kind. And you can, if you finish out, remember you can always go back in with text. You double click on the lettering, and it brings up your toolbox again. And I just changed that one. The placement can go on the inside and outside of the line. So build out from there. Build it out however you like. We'll go over more tools, but I just wanted to show you specifically how you can get started with this stuff. Build from there. I'll pause here and I'll go around and help some people out. So one of the questions is, why I made a pretty complex sketch, but it's not closing, and I can't figure out where the break is. The other last class we went over like just having to zoom in and go through things, and that's really great. That's great if you have only a few points to try to close a few lines. But what if you have something a lot more complex? So let me just draw something quick, yada yada yada. I don't know. We'll see if that works. Over constraints is auto constrain. And as it says here, it generates options using AI technologies. But it gives you a bunch of options because it doesn't know exactly what you're trying to build. So if you hit that, now the problem is it's going to try to auto constrain everything on that sketch. So this is also one of the reasons why I tell you isolate things. So if you have like I've done, like the bender head is on a different sketch than the text and the outline, stuff like that. You see what it's all trying to do here? Now, because I've got all these different things on here, it's going to cause problems, but it gives you options. And hopefully now in this case, it's only given me two. Let's see what happens. And it gives you a slider here that allows you to move it up and down. Now, I don't have anything that's overly obvious to it. So I should be able to just click and drag, move one of these. There we go. Now let's see if it works better. All right, so it's not working for me because I have too many things going on. But this is the tool that will help you a lot. So if you do have a much more complex drawing, this usually will find the breaks and help you work with it. What this slider does is it just helps add constraints again, but it also will help close sketches. So if you have a bunch of floating ones, this will usually help. If it doesn't help, unfortunately, this is the one that like, well, I guess you got to kind of zoom in real close and look through it. So if you do run into that issue and it doesn't close things, best thing would also be hide your images. Because it's just one more thing in your visual confusion there, and just try to work your way around. And you can either click and drag things to move it closed. You can add lines, or one of the other ones was under modify, extend, and that will extend a line to the next line it finds. So I'm under the extend modifier. If I select that line, you can see that it draws that red line straight on through. However, if I select this one, it doesn't know where the heck I'm trying to close it to because there's just nothing out in space here. So you do have to at least be close. So the auto constraint helps, but the modifier extend is also one, but it needs something close. So try those out if manually doing it doesn't help. Restart this. Okay, so just for the sake of time, I jumped across from my bender thing just because need to finish up here so we can make sure we're having enough time. I want to show you how to create like your logo to actually create the extrusions. Now, one of the main things here is also one, you can't just have floating parts. You need to have like a background or something like that just to add to it. So if you've got like text or something like that, that works great, but you do need a background simply because otherwise you're going to have disconnected singular objects. Same thing goes if you can use the extrude to cut through and make it a recess or something, you need to have a background, something to that effect. So with something like this, any of these, if you have text, any of that, I'm just going to swap over to the logo I made before. Now, I'm just making a copy of this. I made no changes to my sketches or anything like that. I'm just making new bodies, set of new bodies. That's all. So you can still see my logo, all of that. And the reason you're seeing it differently is just because I have a separate component. We'll go over that kind of stuff later. It doesn't matter. We'll not worry about that right now. So, like we said before, I like to separate everything out because it helps me organize things. Things like my reference box, the actual logos, the actual text, anything like that. So I'm going to label these real quick. This was the actual verbal star design. And then this outline is just that. Like, let's just say that's a keychain outline. Okay. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because I want to keep things separate, but it will all join together after the fact. All right. So I'm just making this different bodies, no change. So let's hide some things. I hid the well, let's just leave it on that. That way it'll help. Okay. So these are all in separate parts. Just because this gets a little complex, I'm going to hide some parts here. There we are. So now I'm just left with like just the star and things. Great. Now, what I did for this sketch is I just made the overall outline here. And within that, I'll show you, I then used just the offset tool to make copies and move them inward and inward and inward. That's all. So I made it look a lot more complex. All I did was let the program do the work. You can do plenty more with just make an outline and using the offset tool to make like a staggered thing. That's just because I wanted to make it more than just simply just this outermost outline. But to do any of that, I got my sketch and I'm just going to use the extrude tool. So several of you have already done this. If you haven't, that's okay too. So just make sure your sketches are closed, meaning that this outline is blue, or the outline is, or everything inside of that is blue. If it's not a closed sketch and you cannot extrude it because it means your points don't quite go all the way and you've left a gap. Until you close that gap, you cannot extrude what's inside of there. So with this, also make sure you got all the parts, because sometimes if you draw lines, things like that, it will read that as a dividing line. So like right here, see it didn't get the rest of my star. I need to make sure I'm grabbing the rest of those parts. That's all. Now you could isolate stuff too. That's okay. So with that, I'm going to start by, let's say, you know what? I'm just going to grab all the things. So I'm just selecting all of these. If you have a bunch of little parts, it's a lot easier. If you're having trouble, like, oh, come on, oh my God, I got to click, 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 click. All of these little things. It's also easy enough to just, from the side, draw a selection box around it, and you'll select the entire thing. Now, I didn't because I need to clear that. So go from the side, or if you're just trying to get the whole thing, yeah, select the whole thing. Now you got all the things. All right. So let's extrude that to 3. All right, cool. Now, like I said before, it will automatically hide the sketches because it thinks you're done. If it does that, all you got to do is just go back down and hide that. Didn't realize I wrote Regal Star instead of Rebel, but you know what I mean. Now, I want to add different sections here. I'm going to do extrude again. It won't let me select through the body. So easier, 2 ways of doing this. I can either just temporarily hide the body and then select the things I want to extrude, or, oops, orbit underneath, and then I can select the things I want. That's all. So from there, I can drag it upwards, Now, two things will happen. Now, since I started from below and went all the way up, it thinks I want to cut through. It automatically changed on my toolbox from operation new body to cut. You can do that. You can make it cut that section away. That actually works pretty well. Or you can do that as right click, go back and edit that feature, change the operation to join. And now I just have these additional heights. So you can play with different levels and just get more out of your design. That's all. What I also did is if I wanted to say, yeah, leave that thing cut. But the problem is now I have these floating chunks. I need to add a backing to this. I need something behind it. So that's why I also drew the whole thing as an out with that outline. That's why I wanted that whole area there with that outline, with a circle around. You could draw this as a blob if you want. You could make this with a fit point spline and just blah, 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 blah. It could be like a splat symbol or something. That's fine. Doesn't matter, whatever you want to do. But with this, I'm going to do another extrude. I'm going to select everything again. So if I'm having difficulty selecting everything, just hide all the bodies. I know, never gets old. And then I'm going to extrude that. Where's my... there we go. And I'm going to extrude that downward. Oh, I got all the bodies hidden, so let's do it again. The reason I'm going downward is because I already had everything going up, and I need a backing plate for it. So, I don't know, like 2 millimeters. But remember, it's -1 or -2 because I'm going down. Let it go to operation, join, because I'm joining everything together. You can do this after the fact, so if you forget, I'm just going to intentionally leave it as new body. Because right now, I've got all of these different bodies because of all these little chunks. Same thing goes for the text. Let's extrude that. I can select text even different heights. So that one, I don't know, let's do 2. I don't want to cut. New body. There we go. Repeat it again. It hid my text. And we'll do 1.5. I don't know, just because I'm making different things. Again, new body. Ideally, you should use the join tool. I'm just showing you in case you forget. So right now, great. I got my logo. It's got a backing plate. It's got text. I got my symbols. I've used the extrude to make different heights or cuts, something like that. But I've got a crap pile of bodies. Or technically, it's many. What you want to do, and I'll just hide these sketches so it's easier to see what I'm doing. I need to join these all together. If you didn't do it during the extrude, you can do it afterwards by going over modify, and it's a symbol with the 2 squares joined together, combine. Or down, modify, and combine, same thing. This is called a Boolean operation in every other program, but in Fusion it's called a combine. Anyway, all it is it's using 2 or more bodies, objects, and creating something with a combination of that. So combine doesn't just mean join them together because you have different operations. You do have join, which it literally just glues them together and makes all these separate ones that are in fact touching one single body. They cannot be floating. They have to be touching. Or you could use them to cut. So I could have, as long as it is intersecting, so let's say I have like a Venn diagram thing going here. I could use cut to then cut away inside of that, and I would be left with a little munched out circle. Or the last one, which is intersect, instead only keeps the 2 parts that are overlapping. And then you're left with, instead of bug eyes, you're just left with that little pointy ellipse. So that's not always useful, but it is extremely useful when we're combining and messing with different object bodies. But for now, all I want to do is operation join. Now you have 2 selections. You got to select the target body and the tool bodies. The reason there's those different ones is because of the other two options. Join, you're just joining everything together. It doesn't matter. But for the cut and intersect, it means which one you want to actually have as the body you're keeping, and then the other is what you're using as a tool to cut away. So just select one and then just select everything else. I'm just using a selection box. All the things you can see over on the side here, my project tree, all the bodies are selected. Just hit OK. Squishes them all together. Relabel that. New badge. And there we go. Now, one of the things I was playing with before is I was telling you about things like you could make some adjustments to it. So instead of it just being straight up and down, I can play with some of the other tools, which are called fillet and chamfer. These two different tools add curvatures to to edges. So like the fillet tool, I could select the two edges here or the face there. Now, you can use the slider tool, but be careful because it can easily get a little bit out of hand. So I like to just make sure to use numeric inputs, because what I mean by out of hand is if you're using a pretty complex thing and you haven't saved, which you should have saved just now, which I should have saved just now, but if it's too complex, it can get out of hand, and because the whole thing is trying to recalculate on the fly, it can kind of bog your computer down. So I would recommend just typing in, like, let's say 1. All right. Well, because it was only 2 millimeters thick, a 1 millimeter fillet turned that into a completely round side. Because if I'm looking at it from the side, and that whole thing is 2 millimeters, and I just added a 1 millimeter curve to both sides, that just turned it into a complete round. Neato. But you don't have to go that far. I could say, like, I don't know, 0.5 instead. Nope, not 1.5. So now you're left with a little flat side in between. And that's just there, so if you want to add curvature, things like that. Now, we'll warn you, fillets work excellent on round things. Chamfers can work okay on round things, but if it's too complex, like this top here, you're going to just cause errors. And what I mean by that is, let me just cancel that, and I'll show you what a chamfer looks like. Instead, a chamfer is a straight angle. That's all. And that's really relevant on things like, you know what, Crud, I wanted to make sure that this is a keychain. Let's just chop a hole in it. Now, you can always adjust that in the sketch. You could actually draw a circle in your sketch, but if you forgot, several people have done this, you can just use the hole tool. And it's literally, it just cuts a hole. No big deal. So the problem with using the hole tool is you don't have the benefit of like a sketch already built in to reference it. But if you're just plopping it somewhere, that's a bit too big. Then you can just pretty much put it wherever. Yeah, let's make that slightly smaller. That might make it oh, not 52. That's everything is wrong. Made it terribly, terribly wrong. Where's the diameter? There we are. Not 12. Let's make it like 5. That seems more reasonable. And then the depth, yeah, like 5, whatever. And if you're just cutting all the way through, cool, there you go. And that's an easy way to add that. But the one other thing on here is, if you have a square hole or a straight down cylinder and you're trying to make like a keychain in that, it is definitely best add a fillet to that so that the keychain wouldn't bind up in that. That's all. Fillets work really nicely. So around in here, let's say if I wanted to try this out, I don't know if this will work. Tell you what, let's save. And let's try out a fillet on that. Just because I want to see. I can select the whole face. Now, don't go too far because I guarantee it's going to cause an error. So I'm going to put like 0.5 in. Hey, it worked. Anything bigger, it probably wouldn't work. So all that is just making a slight curvature on there. Just a way to get more out of your design.
I might do that with the text on mine.
Text, it works well, but because, yeah, see, 1 millimeter too much, and it's giving me an error right down in that corner. But you can isolate things, so whatever.
Well, I'm still trying to get the text to line up.
Also that.
I've been stuck on that.
So ultimately, what I want you to do is make sure you're putting like some sort of a shape around your design. You could build from there. So if you're making like something that's rectangular and you're adding something outside of that, do exactly that.
I'm actually gonna say.
So that's pretty much that. So basically, I want you to just work on these, experiment, build onto these. If they're too simple, like it's just a logo, sorry, it's just text and a square around it, add something to it, like fillets. Play around with the curvature changes. So like fillets, chamfers, add some stuff to it. The other thing we are going to talk about next class, and we have plenty of time left in class tonight, but next class we are going to start talking about actually printing these. So I want you to build these, finish them up for next class, and then we will look them over in class and talk about printability. So we're going to keep working on these tonight. We're at 4:30. We still got plenty of time. So keep working on your models. But from here, what I want to do is start adding the next level, which is if you want to turn these into a stamp. So I'm going to pause here, check in, people, and we'll do that. All right. So with that, and sorry, I know that this has been quite a jumbly video in class today, trying to cover a lot of things at once and all at the same time. But with that, with the hole, playing with the fillets, things like this, that will give you a clear idea of how you can at least add additional features and make some additional elements to this piece and possibly add some strength to it, which we'll be going over in the future. Ultimately, with this design, you will have your base design, experiment with the different heights of extrusions, uh, as well as with your text, things like that. And make sure, like here on the side here, that's just my old one, all of this is joined into a single body. Nothing is floating, meaning vertically. Everything is in fact connected or intersecting and then joined together. It cannot have floating parts. You can make more than one if you really want to, but essentially needs to have some sort of a spot for the keyhole. It is showing a variety of different heights of extrusion, so you are clearly showing your um, understanding of how to use the extrude tool from a sketch. So, and we will, if it is requested, we will go over how to go about making stamp design. But it looks like nobody's really interested in that at the moment. But I will record a separate video discussing exactly that to make sure that that is addressed for anybody that would like to experiment with that. So thank you very much. Good luck. And if you run into trouble, of course, either try to look it up or let me know. We'll see you next time.